In May 1798, a massive French invasion force of 55,000 men aboard more than 300 ships, including 13 ships of the line, set sail across the Mediterranean. Aboard the most powerful, the 120-gun Lorient, was General Napoleon Bonaparte, France's celebrated hero of the war in Italy. He had been ordered to lead an expeditionary force east to Egypt, the wealthiest province of the Ottoman Empire and an ancient land of mystery and wonder to all educated Europeans. After 6 years of war in Europe, the French Republic faced one remaining enemy, Great Britain. The conquest of Egypt would strike a blow against the British, disrupting their trade in the eastern Mediterranean and threatening their connections to India and the East. These profitable trade networks fueled the British war effort. Moreover, the expedition would extend France's revolutionary, civilizing mission to Egypt, liberating its people from superstition and feudalism. France's corrupt government, the Directory, saw further benefits, the opportunity to acquire tremendous riches and to remove the popular and ambitious General Bonaparte far from Paris, where plots and coups were always a threat. Napoleon, thrilled by the expedition, saw it as a chance to win fresh glory and to walk in the footsteps of his heroes, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. However, the Mediterranean was dangerous for the French. While the Republic's armies had won great victories on land, Britain dominated the seas with victories over the Spanish at Cape St. Vincent and the Dutch at Camperdown. Rear Admiral Sir Horatio Nelson and his squadron of 14 ships of the line patrolled the Mediterranean. Nelson knew a large French fleet had left Toulon but did not know its destination, which remained a closely guarded secret. Undetected, the French expedition sailed south along the Italian coast, arriving off Malta on June 9th. The island, ruled by the Knights of St. John, was quickly surrendered to Napoleon. During his 6 days in Malta, Napoleon overhauled its government, established schools, abolished slavery, and requisitioned money and supplies. Then he sailed for Egypt, leaving General Vaubois and a 5,000-strong garrison to hold the island. Nelson, having regrouped after gales scattered his squadron, correctly guessed Napoleon's destination and raced to intercept. By a stroke of luck, Nelson's squadron passed within a few miles of the French fleet on the night of June 22nd, but thanks to heavy fog and darkness, neither side was aware of the other's presence. Nelson continued to Alexandria, finding no sign of the French. Frustrated, he waited 24 hours before heading north. Just hours later, Napoleon's ships began arriving off Alexandria. Aware of the British presence, Napoleon disembarked quickly. French infantry stormed Alexandria the next morning and overpowered its garrison. The rest of the French army landed safely. Napoleon brought 38,000 troops to Egypt, mostly veterans from Italy. The infantry divisions were commanded by Generals Bonne, Desaix, Kleber, Menou, and Renier, with the cavalry division led by Thomas Alexander Dumas, France's first black general. The army was accompanied by 167 scientists, scholars, artists, and experts known as the savants, who came to study Egypt's wonders. However, Napoleon and the savants found Alexandria a disappointment, reduced by earthquakes and neglect to a ramshackle town. Egypt was nominally ruled by the Ottoman Empire, but in reality, local Mamluk warlords, particularly Murad Bey and Ibrahim Bey, held power. Mamluks, originally slave soldiers, ruled Egypt with an iron fist, leaving its peasants in poverty. To exploit this, Napoleon proclaimed to the Egyptians, "I am come to restore your rights and punish usurpers. I reverence God, his prophet, and the Quran." Meanwhile, Murad and Ibrahim summoned Mamluk warlords to gather an army to crush the invaders. Napoleon decided to strike quickly. Less than a day after landing, he began advancing on Cairo. Misjudging the climate and landscape, he forced the pace, even after his men ran out of water, leading to hundreds collapsing and dying. Bedouin horsemen circled the French, robbing, torturing, and killing stragglers. The army took for days to cover the 45 miles to Damanhur, where they could rest, drink, and trade for food. News arrived of a large Mamluk force approaching. The French advanced to meet them at Shubrakit on the Nile's banks. As 4,000 Mamluk horsemen appeared, the French marveled at their brightly colored outfits and many ornate weapons. Murad boasted he would sever Frenchmen heads like slicing watermelons. However, the Mamluks lacked the discipline and tactics to face a modern army. Napoleon formed his troops into squares, and the Mamluk cavalry could only circle impotently. Scores were shot from the saddle. After 2 hours, the Mamluks retreated with around 1,000 casualties. The French had scarcely lost a man, boosting their morale after the desert hardships. The Mamluks fell back to Mbaba across the Nile from Cairo. Here, within sight of the pyramids, they would face the invader. On the sweltering afternoon of July 21st, Napoleon's forces approached Mbaba. He had 25,000 men organized into 5 giant squares. Murad, with 6,000 elite cavalry, was deployed between Biktil and Mbaba, which was garrisoned by Ottoman infantry and peasant militia. Napoleon planned to drive through the enemy center and crush their right flank against the river. At 3:30 p.m., Desaix's and Rainier's divisions began their advance but became disordered. Murad unleashed his cavalry, the French closed ranks and unleashed devastating volleys. The Mamluks wheeled back to regroup, but more charges met the same result. Many fled. Napoleon ordered Bonn and Weil's divisions forward. The Mamluk cavalry charged again, but shattered on French musketry and bayonets. With the cavalry broken, Bonn and Weil's men poured into Mbaba. Those who weren't killed fled into the Nile, where hundreds drowned. Murad escaped with remnants of his cavalry to Giza. Ibrahim withdrew to Cairo. The Battle of the Pyramids was a crushing victory for the French, taking just 2 hours. The Mamluks suffered over 5,000 casualties, with heavy losses among their elite cavalry. French losses were under 300. Napoleon named the victory after the nearby pyramids. On July 24th, he entered Cairo, finding parts of the city abandoned and in ashes. He observed it would be difficult to find a richer land and a more wretched, ignorant, and brutish people. Cairo, with 600,000 inhabitants, was in French hands. With the Mamluks scattered, Napoleon's dream of eastern conquest seemed within reach. However, 8 days later, the dream was shattered. Nelson and the British Mediterranean Squadron found the French fleet sheltering in Aboukir Bay on August 1st. Nelson attacked, achieving a complete victory. The French flagship, L'Orient, was destroyed in a massive explosion. The British captured or destroyed 11 French ships of the line and took over 3,000 prisoners. With no fleet, Napoleon was stranded in Egypt. Most of the army's cash had gone down with L'Orient. But Napoleon was invigorated by the crisis. His army must support itself in Egypt or perish. General Desaix was sent south in pursuit of Murad Bey, while Napoleon reformed Egypt's administration, abolishing the old feudal system, setting up a postal service, hospitals, and a new tax system. He established the Institute of Egypt for scientific research and showed respect for Islam, funding mosques and encouraging religious observance. Despite rumors of his conversion to Islam, it was a tactic to curry local fav. French efforts to win over the local population failed. Egyptians saw them as foreign occupiers. Minor revolts broke out and were brutally suppressed. In September, Sultan Selim III declared a holy war against the French. The situation in Egypt was about to explode. On October 21st, General Dupuy, Cairo's military governor, was killed during a disturbance. The whole city rose in revolt. The French crushed the uprising, killing several thousand Egyptians. Napoleon pardoned the ringleaders while secretly ordering the beheading of any rioter caught with a weapon. The French reasserted control, but it was clear they would never win the hearts and minds of the Egyptians. Over the next months, the French languished in Cairo, homesick and with dwindling supplies. An outbreak of bubonic plague tormented the army. In the south, General Desaix pursued Murad Bey deep into Upper Egypt, with Brigadier Louis Nicolas Devout distinguishing himself in the campaign. Despite military victories, the French remained isolated, with no prospect of reinforcements or return. Diplomatic hopes were dashed as Talleyrand never left Paris and the Sultan remained hostile. Orders were sent throughout the Ottoman Empire to raise troops against the French. Napoleon's position was desperate. His troops were cut off, disease-ridden, and amidst a hostile population. He responded in the way that seemed obvious to him, as it would have to his hero Alexander. He decided to attack.